Crypto is really good at capital formation, creating marketplaces, some form of incentive for, collective good. What it translates to is indeed a incentive networks to collect resources to actually do something together. The problem is, I call it, any token is a rocket booster. If you point your rocket at the wrong direction, right, you're gonna crash into the crash into the mountain. And if you point in the right direction, gonna end up in a space.
Web3 offers a brand new petri dish.
Our job is to buy great tech at great prices.
AI is also libertarian, right?
Enable use case that people haven't been able to do today.
The next hundreds of millions of players, and they will come to the market through mobile.
My personal reason why I could be bullish in the next 12 months is
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the BlockCrunch podcast. I'm really excited for this episode. So just to give a little bit of context here, now in 2017, there was a landmark paper called Attention is All You Need that was published by 8 scientists at Google. Now this paper today is widely considered to be the foundational document for modern AI. So without that, you won't have OpenAI, you won't have ChatGPT and all that. And it's been cited more than 100,000 times as of 2024. So one of the co-authors of the paper, Illia, actually became the co-founder for the blockchain Near a few years later. So recently, Near has also caught a lot of attention from Illia's recent blog post titled User-Owned AI is Near, which announces that the next big phase for Near is to be building the home for user-owned AI. So what does this actually mean? And what does this imply about blockchains? What does this imply about Near? I'm really excited to have Illia on the show once again to talk about all of this. And before we get started, nothing we discuss is financial advice, and we may discuss assets we have personal exposure to. So welcome to the show, Illia.
Oh, thanks for having me back. It's been a while.
It has been a while. So assuming that most people know you already, but for people who may not be familiar, can you give a little bit of background about what you were doing before Near and kind of why you started Near? This episode is brought to you by YGG. I'm very excited to announce that we're partnering with Yield Guild Games to bring you today's episode. You may remember YGG as the leading guild in Web3 that helped drive the success of games like Axie Infinity and Pixels, but they actually have bigger ambitions than just that. I've really enjoyed co-investing with and also learning all about gaming from their founder Gabby Dezon throughout the years. So here is Gabby to tell us all about how YGG has helped games succeed before.
YGG is evolving into a guild protocol. So don't think of us as a guild. Think of us as a platform that scales guilds of all sizes, which means that we provide the foundation and infrastructure for guilds to scale, do different kinds of quests that can earn them crypto and have them own assets. And right now, the majority of this is still in play to earn games, but there's now different kinds of work that you can do in crypto that can earn you money. Think of what YGG is doing as a combination of Uber and LinkedIn. People are self-organizing into groups and then finding opportunities in Web3 that can not only earn them crypto, but they gain reputation in the form of badges and soul-bound NFTs, which allows them to build up a reputation on things that they've done well in contributing to different protocols.
And now, back to the episode.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, I was at Google Research, deep learning doing deep learning science and engineering. And my team actually was focused on question answering. So back before, you had a Gemini, you saw this like answers directly in search results. And so we were working on powering that by actually building deep learning models that would read the articles in the search results and actually try to give you an answer. And so the challenge we faced was that at the time, the deep learning models were way too slow. And at Google, you have a very specific latency requirements. And so you need to give an answer within 200-300 milliseconds. And kind of the previous architecture family, so-called recurrent neural networks, they are modeling how humans read, right, one word at a time. And that's very slow. And so we were struggling to actually get something in production. We were distilling models to way simpler, so-called bag of words models, to actually make something work. And this idea came, which is hey, what if we don't actually read one word at a time? What if we read all words in parallel and then figure out how to make sense of them through so-called attention mechanism? And that's where, attention is all you need, meaning you don't actually need anything else. You just need that mechanism to make sense of words and then like make the model to reason about the sentence and articles and be able to answer questions. So yeah, I was kind of pretty much I wrote the first transformer code, kind of quick prototype after lunch when we discussed this idea, and then a ton of work went into it to actually go from this is kind of works, it's not random, to this is state of the art and it's like the most performant model. And so I left actually midway because obviously I saw this progress, and in general I wanted to build a product using machine learning. So I wanted to put this in front of users and get the training loop and kind of data loop going. And Google has a natural, like, it's too big. Anything you launch should be $1 billion business. And so if you're trying to build something small, it's just like not realistic to launch out of like a big behemoth like that until it's validated. And so I left, and with Alex, my co-founder, we actually started a Near AI. It was a machine learning company in the beginning, and we were teaching machines to code. So we were actually trying to let people describe a program, an application, and then build it for them with AI. Now it's 2017. Back then it sounded like science fiction. And what we were trying to do is we actually engaged a lot of students, computer science students around the world, to collect data. So they would write code for us, they would write descriptions for us. And we faced a challenge paying them, right? PayPal didn't work with China. It was Eastern Europe. Some of this didn't work. It would cost like $25 for some of the transfers. Some students just didn't have bank accounts. In China, you usually use WeChat, Weixin, right? So it was very cumbersome. And so we kind of started looking at crypto. Actually, somebody's like, hey, can you just send me like Bitcoin or something? We started looking at crypto. It's like, hey, this is a global payment network that allows to send people money across the world in a very programmatic way, which is what we wanted. Now, with Bitcoin, I think back then it costed like $5 to send $5, which is kind of the amount we were sending around. And same with Ethereum. Yeah, so it was very expensive already back then. It was like 2018. And as engineers, we're like, well, trying to dive in. Why is that so expensive? Like, it's all just bits in a network. And so, I mean, I'm coming from Google, right, where everything is sharded, scalable. You can add, another 100 million users, and like network should work with that. Alex actually built a sharded database that's used by Fortune 500 companies called Single Store. So as well, like used to, scale of massive companies. And so it was really strange for us to see blockchains that are supposed to be a global payment network that is literally runs on one computer, limited by how much one computer can process and receive information. And so that's when we pivoted from focusing on AI to actually like, okay, well, there is a problem that if it was solved, we would be using, right? Like, let's actually solve that problem. And then in a way, we were discussing that we'll actually go back and like do other stuff after we solve that. And so that's kind of where Near Protocol came from, is like, how do we build something that actually scales to billion users and doesn't require to increase fees for everyone? And obviously, as part of that, how do we make it easy for people to use? Because that was the other thing. You're like, well, if you want to work on our, data crowdsourcing platform, you first, install extensions, and then actually you need to first buy some more crypto to put into your account to actually use the platform to then get paid, right? Which is like a very weird, it's like you're getting a job, but you first need to like buy something from that job. And it takes like 30 minutes and 33 steps to do that. So like ease of use, ease of onboarding. And then obviously as developers, right? First time I installed Ethereum kind of developer environment, it took me like 8 hours and like 2 pull requests to some libraries. So like, how do we make a setup as well and building for developers easy? So that's what Near really set out to do. Scalable, simple to use, easy to build on platform. We launched it in the end of 2020. And so since then, the ecosystem been growing. We are now kind of on many days, we're the largest by number of active users, active addresses in Web3. We are the largest by, I think, monthly actives as well. And this is because we have this like easy onboarding that like a bunch of applications leverage to onboard their massive user bases on Near without those users even knowing sometimes they use Near under the hood. And, extremely cheap fees, which continue scaling. We actually had a very good example of why sharding is really important when, everybody had this growth spur somewhere in March, right? Solana had that, Base had that, and us. And so everybody else had, networks had like massive spike in fees, and Near, we just added 2 more shards, right? So we just added more capacity to the network and kept the fees low. So kind of proved that, this system works. The sharding actually delivers more capacity and can allow to continue scaling. There's some actually major upgrade is coming in a month or so on the sharding side with stateless validation, which is what like Ethereum research kind of been talking about for past years. We actually have it built and ready to go. And so that part is like really solid, being used and kind of scaling, and like folks are joining. And so back in maybe like to go into the AI side to kind of extend on that, back in 22, actually Alex went back to do AI. And like, I mean, we didn't publicize that much, but yeah, like he actually worked at OpenAI for a bit. And then he started his own company focused on foundational models and kind of program synthesis. So going back to our roots in 23. And so the kind of with this announcements, we're actually consolidating that effort back with broader Near efforts because we see that to be very strategic investment that actually will start changing a lot of things, and we can dive into a lot of those pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to dive into the AI aspect, but kind of before that, just finally touching on the history of Near a little bit. I remember like back in 2018, I was in San Francisco watching a panel. I think you were on that panel. I believe Anatoly from Solana was at the panel. And then back then, I think sharding was like a huge thing for Ethereum. It was a core focus for them. And I think that informed the reason why you guys named it Near, right? Or maybe retroactively, you guys kind of put that meaning on it. Can you kind of tell the story of like why did you guys call it Near and what did it mean at that time?
Yeah, so it's actually called Near because originally it was Near AI, as in AI is near. So it has nothing to do with any blockchain connotations and or Death Note, which some people also attribute it to. But it's really about kind of, I mean, for those who are familiar, there's a book called Singularity. Singularity is near, and the joke was that we're near AI until we're here AI.
I see. Yeah, and I guess on that point, one thing that I did when I was preparing for this interview was actually go on ChatGPT and try to find out what the 7 other co-authors of your paper are doing, and I realized all of them are doing AI companies. So I don't know if you're still in touch with them, but do you ever get questions from them? Hey, why are you in crypto? Like, did you red pill them on crypto as well?
Yeah, we actually had the gathering around GTC, the NVIDIA conference, because Jensen invited all of us at the panel with him, which was pretty interesting. So we kind of talked around that, and like we had some time together to just catch up. And I mean, there's definitely a combination of kind of interest from what we're doing because we've done a lot of things that are indeed interesting for AI, right? Like we actually on Near, there's been a crowdsourcing platform that has been collecting data for past 3 years called Near Crowd. So like that original kind of use case that we started Near with, was built and kind of been running. There's like 2,000 people working every day on it. And there's now like lots and lots of these platforms actually spawning up, right? Because there's so much demand. At the same time, I think like there is a interesting kind of transition that happened, right? Most people except Lukasz now are founders of startups, and so they're not actually doing research anymore, right? They're running companies, so there's kind of some catch up on that as well, where kind of this transition from being a researcher to being a founder, CEO or CTO is like a pretty different job. but I think, I mean, I do get this question on, why we I'm personally and what is near doing AI. And so, as I said, like Alex been doing this for for over a year and a half, one way or another. And I was actually advising his company and went to some of the offsites they had, kind of pushing some code into their code base. So generally, like we've been doing this on the back end, kind of making sure we have the skill set as well as like increasing know-how. And so now, kind of with this announcement a couple of weeks ago, we kind of actually like putting it more in front and starting to bring in more of other projects as well to like work together. I also, for since mid last year as well, we started so-called Edge Intelligence Collective, which is really focusing more on smaller language models and smaller AI models that are run on devices, and kind of like what are the repercussions there. And we see now interesting, obviously Apple kind of this week showcasing a bunch of stuff they can do on the phone locally. I think we'll see a lot more of that as well, kind of across the board.
And we're going to touch on that in a bit as well. And first, I want to touch on kind of your broad views of the crypto AI vertical, right? Because there are many sub verticals even within the intersection of crypto and AI. And I think just the past 12 months alone, we've seen a bunch of new computational networks launch, basically clouds for GPUs. There's like incentive networks, like things like BitTensor. So a lot of different kind of aspects to both bring AI on chain, but also kind of do things related to AI with crypto. So from your perspective, like which ones of these subverticals excite you the most? What sort of use cases is most synergistic with crypto?
I mean, I think crypto is good for few specific use cases. And this is crypto, right? Not Web3 as a whole. There's a lot more stuff in Web3 that's not crypto. And so crypto is really good at capital formation, right? It's good at creating marketplaces. It's good at creating kind of some form of incentive for collective good. And so what it translates to is indeed a incentive networks to kind of collect resources to actually do something together. Now it doesn't always work, and the problem is, I call it, any token is a rocket booster. If you point your rocket at the wrong direction, right, you're gonna like crash into the crash into the mountain. And if you point in the right direction, gonna end up in a space. And so like this is obviously a very important asterisk there. Marketplace is same thing. It's an amazing place for marketplaces, right? It reduces operational costs, right? So for example, for crowdsourcing data, right, traditionally, a Web2 company will need a massive amount of operational team to handle all the contractors, all the payments, all of the stuff, right? The overhead there is massive, right? Their margins are pretty much compressed by that. Versus in blockchain, like you can actually do all of that pretty, cheaply with a smart contract and not worry about a lot of these things, right? Anybody can come in, say, here's the data, what I labeled, here's my, verification procedure, go. And then, you just kind of pay people like at the cost of what people are actually willing to participate in, which is literally just the active market / auction on the, oh, I'm willing to do it for like 2 cents, for example, I'm willing to do it for 5 cents. So that kind of like is way more effective than traditional Web2. I'm contracting someone, I need to pay them salary, it's really hard to fire them, and like it's a very kind of becomes very complicated, and like gig work also has a lot of challenges. So as well as, hey, I want like million people crawling data or doing something, we incentivize kind of everyone to do this. And like the more data, the more efforts are created, the more valuable network becomes. So like very positive stuff work as well. So all of those use cases are clearly there. The problem is also the flip side of this, the marketplace themselves has, very low margin and result. When you have like 5 competing marketplaces doing the same thing, they pretty much drive margins for all of them, because like if they all kind of replaceable and don't have network effects, then because like crowdsourcing or compute marketplaces for the matter don't have a network effect. Compute marketplace, you come in, you say, I want, 10 GPUs, you get 10 GPUs, you use it. You don't really care if it's from marketplaces A, from marketplace B, from marketplace C. So you can have, you can like check all of them, see where you have the available, the cheapest price, and get it from there. And so what will means it will start compressing margins. And so this marketplaces will become almost like public goods at the end, right? And so they themselves don't have a really good business. They're a good product, but not a good business. And that's a really, I would say, like interesting conundrum in with crypto is that a lot of the things that like actually make a lot of sense, they have a limited kind of value capture, right? And I think there's an interesting point that like that has actually slowed down the crypto adoption in some of those marketplaces as a result. So I think like what's interesting there is like, how do you then go and get the value capture, right? And so there's interesting value captures around real world assets. So take compute as a real world asset now, not as a marketplace, right? Somebody needs to buy hardware, install it and provide a service, but that hardware is very expensive. It's like $30,000 for a 100. And so you can actually collect, like form capital, do capital formation to buy that hardware and then pay back to the people who put the money some portion of the revenue you're generating from that hardware. So now this is a yielding asset that is actually, yields potentially 30, 40% annual. And so you have an interesting kind of model where it's more of a real world asset that generates revenue that, is a useful asset that is pure utility pretty much in commodity that can be tokenized and opened up, and so people can participate in the future of compute. And so there's actually a project we had on the office hours yesterday that doing exactly that. And then compute marketplace on top is just a complement product that offers access to all of that kind of compute assets. So this is kind of where it gets interesting, is like, how do we use, the things that crypto is really good at and pair it up with good products that people need, which potentially are not good businesses, but like pair this kind of together.
So it's like using the capital formation aspect of crypto, like how easy it is to form capital and coordinate effort, and then you use it to basically bootstrap some of the upfront costs. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I'd like to kind of zoom out a bit from that as well, to your piece that I think you published on the 22nd of May called User-Owned AI is Near. So with that piece, you basically discussed how important it is to put the power of AI back in the hands of the users rather than a few big corporations. And I think it's very timely because as of today's recording, I think 2 days ago, Apple announced their version of AI, which is not artificial intelligence, it's Apple intelligence. And they're working with some pretty big companies like OpenAI, and they're funded by Microsoft, I think. So seems like part of your concerns that AI will be controlled by big corporations are kind of actualizing. So just to dive into that a little bit, what's the worst that can happen, right? If all of AI models are just trained by large companies and, all of AI is controlled by these big companies, is it a privacy concern? Are there kind of ethics concern? Or what's the main thing that kind of keeps you up at night there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of things, right? Because for a second, let's imagine, right, we're in the middle, inside one of these companies. The way they work, right, the way the incentive structure is, you need to post more revenue every year, ideally every quarter. So you need to actually, generate more revenue. And let's imagine you're one of those, top 5 companies right now in the world, the ones that consumer companies, and you already have all the customer base. Like, it's really hard to move the needle, like, multi-digit % on your total, like on your user base. And so for you to show more revenue, you really need to kind of generate more revenue per user. So so-called like average revenue per user. And to do that, like if you are based on attention, right, you need to capture more of the attention. They need to spend more time on your product, right? And remember, for a person, we have limited time in our life, in our day. So pretty much it's taking out, time from something else. And so what we see here is really kind of these platforms have a very positive flywheel where users spend more time, they generate more money for the company. This company invests this money into more compute and better AI models, which are optimized in result, right, to get people to spend more time on that website. And this is not new. This has existed before generative AI, right? Like there's social networks that are literally optimized for you to spend more time on them. But this AI models, especially now that they're generating language for you, right? Like as you optimize them, as you do so-called reinforcement learning from human feedback, and in this case, you're doing reinforcement learning from, getting people to spend more time on them, they gonna start getting better and better at pretty much manipulating you to spend more time on these websites, right? Like imagine your feed now is not kind of people like feed of what people created, but actually generated feed of content that you are, want to watch or want to consume or want to interact with. And so that content becomes better and better for you. You want to interact with it more and more, right? So it's just going to like take on more and more of your day to really like monetize you with their advertisement partners. So that's really like where this is going, right? This is like pretty much, this is just a failure in a way of a business models that happened in Web 2 because actually back in the day, they didn't have a way to do transactional processing, right? And transactional business models. And so it ends up all of it being advertisement based. And so this is kind of I call it, corporate owned AI. That's kind of where we are now. And yes, I mean, it's also like all your data sits there so they can do a lot of stuff with it. So, A, it leaks, B, it's like used in all kinds of ways that you have no idea. C, you have also this problem where inside any of those companies, somebody decides how they train this model, right? And so to give you an example, back at Google, I'm training a model. It gives me answer that Barack Obama is born in Kenya. I'm like, why the hell is that? And it's like, well, actually the Fox News and Alex Jones website and, all of these websites are talking about that Barack Obama is born in Kenya. And I'm like, well, shit, I don't want my model to respond that. So I'm going to go and filter out those websites, right? So I made some very clear editorial decision on content. And like, I didn't filter out those specific pages. I filter out the whole website because it's not quote unquote trusted. So now you like very naturally have a left leaning for US listeners, left leaning model because you filter out all the right leaning content. And like, I mean, there's a whole separate issue of like, divergence in opinions, etc., that happens in US and somewhat around the world. But this is just an example of like editorial decisions that are made that are completely opaque to the user. And again, you don't even know, and then like some content is copyrighted, so they removed it, something they added, and like all of these models are learning from data, right? At the end, whatever you show them is what they're gonna know and how they're gonna make decisions, right? You can also imagine embedding advertisement loop directly into this as well, where if like Mercedes comes or Tesla comes and pays more money, we're gonna prioritize it when the model responds to you. And this is actually a problem, even if like the weights of the model are open source. If you don't know what it was trained on, like this weights might have already contained that, you should like buy Tesla pretty much anytime you talk about cars, right? So like you can inject bias and there's even so-called sleeper agents that you can inject in training that activate later when you ask specific questions. So that's kind of the current state. And I mean, we can talk more about like issues, etc., but like, so what is the opposite? The opposite is models that are actually optimized for the user, right? Where the success criteria is not the corporate revenue, but actually individual user success. And the way we can measure it is actually net worth of the user. Like we want it to grow. We don't want the net worth of the company to grow. We want individual users' net worth grow. Instead of NPS of a product, right, so-called net promoter score, you can imagine a score of your well-being. Like we actually done this way long ago. We were doing a prototype of a product. And we asked users at the end of the day, how did they feel about their day? And that was like, among other things we've done, this was the most interesting thing because people had like a second to reflect on their day. And then they saw the chart, like how they felt day over day. So you can have like things like that where you actually care about the user and then you optimize for their success. And so now you have a model that serves them, focuses on their success, and in a way becomes like a shield against everybody else's, pressure, misinformation, and all the other things that's happening in the world, which, going to just continue to accelerate. So that's what, user-owned AI is. It's really about how do we focus on the individual and their community as well. It's not, obviously we live within society, and instead of this corporate-owned AI, which is kind of the current system, and like accelerating into that mode.
And I understand it's probably still an open kind of challenge right now in terms of finding a model to sustain this individual-based kind of future of AI, user-owned AI, because for these big companies, obviously, the reason why they do this ad-driven model is because it makes them money. So how do we make these kind of user-owned AI future sustainable? Like, are there business models that might work here, or is this still kind of the biggest open challenge right now?
I think, it's obviously not fully solved. So, but I think what we see already, right, is that kind of the crypto economy can create new business models and new structures, right? Where instead of having this kind of, you paying for, like you're either paying for a product or you're trading your attention, is creating this win-win situations where, for example, you stake some amount of token and now you're participating in the economy, but it's not kind of taking out from somebody else, and it's not taking out from you. And so you can imagine a system where, like you need to stake some portion to kind of unlock some access to this, user-owned AI. And then, through that, there's kind of a network effect of as more and more people staking, there is now more and more compute available, more and more participants available. And then you also have like data economy where like some data you're willing to, for example, provide for training models, maybe in an anonymized way. Sometimes you want the model actually to come to you, to your locally stored data on your device, score that, and maybe like the advertiser will pay for that while still have a higher CTA because that's more personalized than it can be. So there's like few different aspects across this, but like at the end, it's all around the crypto rails because we can have like so much more like smaller payments, micro payments. We can have, this win-win kind of collaborative efforts as well, where as more people join, actually everybody becomes more successful. So those are fundamental building blocks. And then depending on specific layer of the stack that we're kind of building, they have all a little bit different business models using these primitives.
I think one thing that kind of surprised me, actually, maybe not as a surprise to you, but when Apple announced their kind of Apple Intelligence, they actually were promising personalized AIs in like private clouds, right? So they were kind of thinking about a lot of the things that you were talking about in terms of like data privacy side. Is that an example of user-owned AI, or is that still kind of not fully the vision that you're looking for?
I mean, it's definitely in that direction. And I actually been talking about this for a bit now because the reality is we need a new operating system that's like AI native, that has all of those features and functionality. I mean, the interesting thing is Apple is actually probably more privacy conscious than other companies generally. Although, right now everybody's like arguing that the whole OpenAI integration is like complete violation, etc. But they are actually asking if you're willing to share with OpenAI. So, and you can always just disable Siri. But I think the challenge with Apple is it's a closed platform, right? And so there's kind of combination of just natural corruption that as we know any closed platform has. Like it's the more power you have, the more kind of the harder it is to withstand that. And like again, I see for sure like it's moving in the right direction, but by the nature that like they will probably tax everyone participating in it, right? And they will be making kind of the lion part of the kind of economy that's built on top of it. It's just going to be so limiting at what you can build, right? And we probably will see. I mean, like we already see a ton of lawsuits around, like App Store, and kind of just like ways you can participate with their platform. So in some sense, like again, we need a new like open source operating system that kind of uses AI at the core, and at the same time, anybody can participate on it and really be kind of equal participant. And I think it's a hard lift, and it will take some time, but Yeah, I think that's a direction that we'll get over time.
Yeah, it's interesting to me to see Apple being so kind of privacy conscious, but it's still quite far away from the fully kind of open model that you can really only do with crypto. And if there's a space that could probably crack business models or financial models to enable some sort of sustainable, completely open source system for AI, it's probably going to be crypto. And obviously, that's one of the things that you guys are trying to figure out with the Near AI R&D lab. And the big news that you mentioned just now was also your co-founder, Alex, who joined OpenAI and then did his own AI company for a bit, rejoined Near to actually build this lab with you. And I thought it was funny that Hasib from Dragonfly Capital on Twitter called this the Manhattan Project moment for crypto AI. So basically getting all of the gigabrains in crypto AI together to research. So what are you guys researching? Like, what are you guys trying to solve with this lab?
Yeah, so there's a very specific thing we want to move toward, and then there's a bunch of things that kind of on the way that we need to figure out. So the kind of core point that we pretty much brought back what we were working on at Near AI, in 2017, which is building applications. Web3 is in a very unfortunate state that we probably have 100,000 infrastructure projects right now, 10,000 layer twos, and we have like a dozen applications for the whole space, right? and the problem is they're not getting funded. It's kind of hard to build like polished experience, and it's hard to onboard users, etc. And so, kind of what we're trying to do, and I'll tell you why this is important even in longer term, but in the medium term, we want to enable people to build applications kind of end to end with AI as your kind of AI developer. And so experience we kind of have, as a prototype right now, you're coming in, you're describing the idea of the application you want to build, let's say, freelance, like a decentralized freelancer marketplace or an order book or a note-taking app. And it writes out the specification and kind of, explores how you want it to work. It asks you questions, and then it goes and tries to build it, right? Write a smart contract, write the front end, add some middleware, kind of create the full application end to end. Now, it doesn't work fully. That's where the research part comes in. But why is this important? I mean, to medium term, very clear, right? If we can build, 10,000 applications, for example, using this, we open it up to maybe technical or even non-technical people who can really quickly get to a prototype and, plug it into one of our distribution channels with lots of users. Boom, we have a whole ecosystem of applications now. And we can start competing with Web 2, where, literally all of the developers in Web 3 is less than one Google department, right? Like Google for Work, for example, has more engineers than all of Web 3.
I didn't know that.
So I'm not even talking about some search or search has probably just search product has more engineers for sure. So that's kind of medium term. Now there's the long-term implications of this, which are, if you want to do advancements on reasoning, if you want to do kind of progress toward AGI, you need to figure out how to do more logical steps, planning, all of those things, and which is coding actually requires. So coding is a really good environment where you can test reasoning, logic, etc., and even math understanding. The other side of this is also we're actually moving into the world where LLMs will be good at finding vulnerabilities in the code. They're still not good enough to write code themselves, but they're actually starting to get good at finding vulnerabilities. And to give you an example, I actually tested that on one of the vulnerabilities that came out a week ago. And, with a little bit of prompting, it found it and explained exactly to me where a vulnerability was in the code, before they fixed it. So I'm going to post about that, but that's just to give you an example. This is already happening and with existing models. So what's going to happen is we're going to start seeing actual, 0-day hacks, etc., across the stack. And so the only way to fundamentally fix that is to actually have code written that is formally proven. Mm-hmm. And yes, I mean, there's in crypto, actually, a lot of people have been talking about this, but it's extremely complicated. People are really bad at this. And so the idea here, we have now an environment where we have AI writing code, and we have smart contracts, which we want to have, absolutely correct. So we want formal proofs of them. So we can actually have a really nice environment to research how to get formal verification proofs for AI-rated smart contracts. And so that as well is a very fundamental kind of research block that is important for AI safety and kind of in general, safety of our kind of systems going forward. So that's like a very important block. Now, the kind of, packaging all this together, right? You need something that, can interact with a user who potentially non-technical and actually figure out what they want, right? So it's a very different flow from what normally like people are used to, because this is about asking questions and understanding trade-offs. Right? So again, this is some advancements we need to make around kind of the mental model that these LLMs are able to maintain about what you're trying to do, and actually prompting person to like really think through some of these problems. So it's really, again, good environment to test it. So good environment to test kind of this, prompting the user and collecting and building a world model. Good environment to test logic and reasoning. Good environment to test formal verification and kind of writing correct code. And then in general gives us a very useful product in the medium term to actually generate a lot of applications for NEAR ecosystem and Web3 ecosystem, using chain abstraction, using all of the products we have in the ecosystem to really kind of bootstrap as well the number of applications that exist. And going forward, this is actually how, the new operating system, AI native operating system will look like, which will be generating apps for you on the fly potentially, where you're just like, oh, actually, I want my note-taking app to have, this functionality, and then like, boom, regenerate it, and you can interact with it. So it's also like toward this longer-term vision. And this, underneath requires a lot of like machine learning advancements and like tooling, agentic frameworks, infrastructure to like route decentralized inference, like all of the stuff is really like new data, novel data feeds, etc. Web3, like understanding of Web3 itself by AI models, so Web3 foundational models, like all of this are complements that we actually working with team in the ecosystem to actually bring kind of as context and, pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah, and obviously, I think for formal verification, it's one of those holy grails for blockchain designs that people have been talking about for a while. And another kind of holy grail type of development is what you guys call chain abstraction as well. So for people not familiar with what this is, can you kind of walk us through what is the mentality behind chain abstraction and what are you guys doing with it on NEAR?
Yeah, so chain abstraction actually is something that, we didn't have the name for that, but the principle we kind of established in 2018 when we started. And that was the idea that as a user, you ideally should not need to think about the blockchain. You should be able to use it and the blockchain should be hidden, which is, I would say, like a different mindset from what I would say Ethereum takes, where you kind of need to know about the blockchain and you are using the Ethereum explicitly, and then through that, you're accessing applications. And so we built a lot of tooling on NEAR to enable that, right? We have meta transactions, we have, fast auth that allows you to authenticate inside the app directly. You can log in with email, like all of these things, right? Which, people also end up adding to Ethereum ecosystem over time, but we kind of designed a lot of this from the start. Kind of our account abstraction system was designed for that. Now, the realization somewhere in 2022 was that, okay, well, yes, NEAR, is an ecosystem, it's growing, but there's so much more stuff going on across all chains. There are going to be more layer 2s launching as well. And so how do we, unlock our users who are right now still only limited to what NEAR can offer to the whole Web3 ecosystem, right? Because at the end, we want Web3 to win. Like that's kind of the mindset. And so that's when we started working on a product called Chain Signatures, which enables and also decentralized front ends to complement it, which enables this way to really for NEAR account to really interact with applications on other chains, right? So in a way, we have a multi-party computation MPC network that can sign transactions for other chains based on some kind of NEAR account facilitation. And so that is kind of, uplifted us, and we kind of started building this coalition of people who are actually thinking in a very similar way, and calling this chain abstraction where like ideally, whatever users comes in, whatever, be that wallet or application, they're able to use whatever chain underneath, whatever the kind of technology been built underneath in a very transparent way. And specifically, for example, assets stay where they were issued. Like instead of bridging assets, you actually bring your accounts to that chain if that's economical. And so that's kind of the chain abstraction movement. And then within that, right, we see really interesting products now already launching or going to launch soon, where you're able, for example, to have a multi-chain DEX that's fully non-custodial, right? That's able to, swap Bitcoin for Solana or, USDT on Near for a new token that just launched on the new L3 that, just got added to the chain list on GitHub, right? So that's kind of the, or Hot is a wallet that offers now a way for Near users, which they have over 9 million now, to connect to Base, right? Without like setting up Base wallet, without needing to figure out a lot of details. And then obviously, you want to abstract gas token, so you don't need to think about the gas on that chain, and you want to kind of do a lot of this stuff. So that's a mindset, abstract the blockchain, empower user to be able to navigate the whole Web3 and use all of the applications across it, and then give them kind of one entry point, one account that's easy to onboard and kind of grow their usage. And then potentially be able to, almost like trade accounts and do other stuff underneath.
So I think that's a great explanation of why Near is kind of designed with user experience in mind. I guess bringing this more specifically to AI as well, why is Near a kind of blockchain or ecosystem that's uniquely positioned for AI? Are there kind of specific things about a Near that you think should attract AI developers the most relative to other chains out there?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a combination of things, right? One is, the fundamental design of Near, the fact that it can actually continue scaling, right? Like we expect with, influx of this AI projects, especially on the agent side, where these agents that want to participate as financial partners in the ecosystem. Like we're gonna have a lot, like some people say, oh, we're gonna have trillion agents, right? But even if we have like 100 million new actors playing around, right? Like there's no other chain that actually continues scaling for that capacity. The second thing is just like the kind of the critical mass of integrations that is happening right now, right? You need data. We have like multiple data projects providing across different aspects. You need, compute, and you need inference. We have those as well. And we're actually building kind of a router and a hub for all that, so people can actually easily plug in and discover things. And so that will serve as kind of a extremely useful tool to really plug in applications with users, AI inference and data providers and kind of other context providers and tool providers and agent providers into one system. Finally, there's something that we're working on which is a little bit, I would say, still out there, but there's a fundamental missing piece in Web3, not just blockchain, which is how do you ensure when you connect to someone that they actually respond to you, right? Right now, on the networking stack side, Near actually pioneered using the stake of the validators and nodes to prevent, to actually use for Sybil resistance and anti-eclipse attacks. Right, so our networking stack, it's not based on Leap P2P or any of that. We actually hand design that, and it uses a lot of the kind of blockchain information to ensure that you're not getting kind of Sybil or eclipsed. And so extending that to also add we call it proof of response, is allowing to now kind of in the future to have everything from decentralized storage where you can have verification that they will respond to you, or AI agents having a payment channel and kind of paying for each other's interactions and services. You can have API calls, and you can have like other peer-to-peer communication platform. And it's useful again for broader Web3 applications across the board. And so it's really about like kind of a stack of tools and kind of the ecosystem that's been built around to really focus on kind of AI use cases and kind of communication between, both on-chain and off-chain for this kind of like AI and broader Web3 applications.
And I guess just to wrap things up here as well, because we know this will be a big year for all of the initiatives that you talked about for Near AI. So, what can listeners expect to see from Near ecosystem this year in terms of your developments in AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll see a combination of kind of a lot of projects that are going to be doing, AI related work, right? Even the projects that kind of traditionally don't feel like AI. So, I mean, Kaiching is a really good example, right? They are, uh, I mean, although the company that done it called Cosmos AI, right, out of Singapore, but they've built this, experience that is pre-installed on over 8 million phones with Oppo and Xiaomi. And what they are actually working on is so-called locally stored data. So this is where AI model comes to them on the edge of on the device and is scoring using your local context, using your local model in privacy, and then give that output back to the website you're looking at or the app you're looking at. Right, so we'll see a lot more of the applications kind of adopting some of the AI technology directly into the experience. Right, Minbase has AI prompt pretty much where you can talk like, "Hey, mint me NFT," or launch a token or whatever. So that's kind of one layer. There's a lot of infrastructure as well coming out. Again, decentralized inference, compute markets and kind of compute real world assets, data providers and crowdsourcing that kind of build out this layer of infra underneath, which again we have the so-called like a router hub for this. And finally, on Near AI research side, obviously we expecting to make some progress toward this AI developer. We have kind of prototype. We're probably gonna work with some community members to play with it and like build some apps and see where the gaps are, so we can continue iterating on how the product works. So I have this ambitious goal of using this AI developer to build 10,000 applications. That would be like, most of them will be probably like toy applications, but even if we build like 100 like interesting applications that people can then go and launch and kind of do growth on, I think that would be amazing for the ecosystem and Web3 in general.
Yeah, because especially with the recent wave of like social apps, I feel like a lot of them are relatively easy to build. And especially if they're formally verified as well, that would also help a lot. Like a big example is like Pump.fun, which was this platform for meme coins and it got exploited. I figured it's probably not too difficult of a platform to build. And if you have that AI builder and it provides like form of verification as well so that it doesn't get exploited, I think that would be honestly a pretty big kind of inspirational moment for people to come in and start a bunch of apps. So actually for those type of people, for developers who are looking to experiment with kind of AI development tools or just get involved with the AI lab, what are the best places for them to reach out to you guys?
I think we need probably a few more weeks to get it polished, but yeah, keep track of the near underscore AI Twitter, where we're going to be posting some of the stuff.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Illia. It's really great to talk to you again, and I look forward to sharing this with everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for supporting another episode of the BlockCrunch podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please give us a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you're listening to this on. It really helps us a lot. Or if you prefer YouTube, you can subscribe to our channel on YouTube as well to not miss an episode. I'd love to hear from you guys as well, and I personally make sure to read every single comment on YouTube or tweets that are directed at me. So feel free to leave a comment there. Let us know what project you want us to bring on or what trends you want us to talk about, or tweet at me at Mr. Jason Choi or at the BlockCrunch on the platform previously known as Twitter, currently known as X. And thank you so much for supporting, and I'll see you in the next episode.